Welcome to Lakshman Biology. Today we are going to see about genetics part 1. Genetics. First of all, we will see about the history of researches. History of researches in genetics. There is a scientist, name of the scientist is G.J. Mendel. He did work on Pisum sativum, and he identified how the characters are transferred from one generation to another generation. Hence, the Mendel is called as father of genetics. Father of genetics. Why he called as father of genetics? He identified principles of inheritance. So laws of inheritance. Laws of inheritance. There are 3 laws in the laws of inheritance of Mendel. These laws will explain how characters are transferred from one generation to another generation. Next, William Bateson. If you see the William Bateson, he is the scientist who given term genetics. Term genetics. Term genetics is given by William Bateson. Then another scientist, name of the scientist is Morgan. T.H. Morgan. If you see the T.H. Morgan, we can call him as a father of experimental genetics. Father of experimental genetics. Why he called as father of experimental genetics? He did work on Drosophila. And he did many experiments on Drosophila. He identified the linkage. Physical association of genes on the same chromosome. Physical association of genes on the same chromosome is called as linkage, sex linkage, and also he did work on crossing over, linkage map, etc. He did different experiments on the Drosophila to know about linkage, sex linkage, crossing over, linkage maps, etc. These are the different scientists that we can observe in the genetics. After that, we have to see about the terminology of genetics. Terminology of genetics. If you want to understand about the genetics topic, we should know about the different terminology that we will use in the genetics. One by one we will discuss. First, we will see what is the genetics. Genetics is branch of biology. The genetics is a branch of biology. What it will explain? It will explain about, it is nothing but it deals with study of inheritance and variation. Branch of biology which deals with inheritance. Inheritance means how the characters are transferred from one generation to another generation. Inheritance and variation. It is also explained what is the reason for the variation from one generation to another generation, or variation between the parents and offsprings, variations within the offsprings. Also, you can study in the genetics. If you see the genetics is the branch of biology that deals with the study of inheritance and variation. Next, we'll see what is the term inheritance. Inheritance is the process. Okay, inheritance is process in which what happen, characters move from generation to generation. move from one generation to another generation. One generation to another generation. Other generation. That is called as inheritance. Next, variations. Variations means difference in between difference in between parents and offsprings. Parents and offsprings. Variation means we can also say that it is the difference among the offsprings, or we can say the difference between the parents and offsprings is called as inheritance. Once again, the genetics is the branch of biology which deals with the study of inheritance and variation. Inheritance is the inheritance means how characters. It is the process which explain how the characters are moved from one generation to another generation. Variations means the differences. Differences that mainly we can see in between the parents and offsprings. Offsprings are nothing but children. Then if you observe the variations, variations are divided into different types. Variations. See, the variations which occurs in the somatic cells are called as somatic variations. Somatic variation. Variation. Somatic cells means the cells which are present in the body that are not involved in formation of gametes. Okay, it is non-inheritable. The variations which occurs in the somatic cells are called as somatic variations. These are non-inheritable. Non-inheritable means those are not transferred from one generation to another generation. There is a other type of variations which are called as germinal variations. Germinal. The germinal variations also called as blastogenic variations. Blastogenic, germinal or blastogenic variations. Here, somatic variations means variations which are non-inheritable, not the inheritable, which occurs in the somatic cells. Germinal variations means the variations which occurs in sex cells. Variations or germ cells. Variations which occurs in germ cells. Germ cells. Germ cells mean the cells which are going to form the gametes. Hence, the germ cells can form the gametes. Hence, the germinal variations or blastogenic variations are inheritable. Inheritable means that can transfer from one generation to another generation. Then, if you see the germinal variations or blastogenic variations, which again divided into two types. Germinal variations or blastogenic variations are divided into two types. First one is continuous. Continuous variations. If you observe the continuous variations which occurs are controlled by single gene, controlled by one gene. If variations are controlled by one gene, that is called as continuous variations. Next, there is a few variations, those are called as discontinuous variations. Discontinuous variations. Both the continuous variations and discontinuous variations are inheritable, which occurs in the germ cells. If the variation is controlled by the single gene, that is called as continuous variation. If variations occurs by the group of genes, that is called as discontinuous variation. Group of genes controlled by group of genes or many number of genes. That is about different types of variations. Thank you. In next class, we'll discuss about part 2 of genetics.